Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah shir. We are holding a Mishnah Berurah Chel Gimel, and Mirtz Hashem today we will be learning Daf Samach Amud Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today Daf Samach Amud Aleph, 2 lines off the bottom near the end of the line. Siman Reish Tzadik Aleph Sif Hey. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanisunim Batzara Ubashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayom Ubein Bayabosha Hamakayim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yetziah Mitzara L'Rvacha Me'afela La'ira Mishibad L'Geula Hashta Bagalo of Izman Kariv and Amar Amein. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Tzvi ben Leah Miriam. Our learning should also be a schus Refuah Shalema for Chava Hadassah Bas Rezel Serel, and our learning should be a schus for Yisrael ben Rachel, Yonason ben Michal, Yoel ben Michal. The Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over them together with all of our other brothers and sisters that find themselves in harm's way. B'chol Makom Shehem. So we're here in Siman Reish Tzadik Aleph Sif Hey. We have been discussing the halachas of Shalosh Shudas. I feel funny every time I say that because the word just doesn't mean anything. Shalosh Shudas, which is a corruption of Shalosh Su'udas, and it refers to Su'udas Shlishis, the third Suda, the Suda Shlishis that we eat on Shabbos afternoon. Says the Mechaber Sif Hey, Tzarech la'asoisa bepas. The first opinion here in Sif Hey, the Mechaber brings down from the Torah, and it's a Ari in Tosfos and Yuma. The first opinion holds that you must make Su'udas Shlishis with bread. You have to wash, you have to eat a Suda with challah. And of course, based on that, you're going to have Lechem Mishnah, which is something which we already stated in a previous year. So Tzarech la'asoisa bepas, you have to have lechem. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Chaf Beis, Tzarech la'asoisa bepas. Why does Su'udas Shlishis have to have pas? The Mishnah Berurah explains, Kevin the Alfinon Shalosh Su'udais Mishalosh Pa'amim Hayoim Tiksivi Gabe Mon. We learned previously, why do we have to eat 3 Su'udais on Shabbos? Because Chazal, they found a support for this in the Pasuk. We have the Pasuk by the Mon, where it says, Vayomer Moshe Ichluhu Hayoim. You should eat the Mon today on Shabbos. Ki Shabbos Hayoim Lashem. Shabbos is a day for Hashem. Hayoim Loisim Tza'u Basadeh. On this day, on Shabbos, you're not going to find Mon outside. You're not going to find Mon if you go collect Mon outside, because no Mon fell on Shabbos. So the extra portion that fell on Erev Shabbos on Friday, that's the portion that you're going to eat on Shabbos. Now in that pasuk, it has the word Hayoim 3 times, and from there, the Chazal said that we have to have 3 Su'udais on Shabbos. Now, let's go back to our Mishnah Berurah here, Ois Katan Chaf Beis. What the Mishnah Berurah is pointing out is like this. We learn out the halacha of Shalosh Su'udais from a pasuk by Mon. And therefore, continues the Mishnah Berurah, Tzarech la'asoisa bepas. Therefore, all 3 Su'udais have to have pas. Now, how does 1 plus 1 equal 2 here? What exactly is the Mishnah Berurah saying? What the Mishnah Berurah is saying is like this. Realize that we learn the halacha of Su'uda Shlishis. We learn the halacha that you need a third Suda from the fact that it says Hayoim 3 times in psukim that are discussing the Mon. Now, the critical piece of information that the Chavetz Chaim does not write over here is that the Mon was referred to in the pasuk as being lechem, because we have another pasuk that says, Hu halechem asher nosan Hashem lachem la'achla. This Mon is the lechem. It's the bread that Hashem is giving you to eat. So the Mon, we learn out the need for 3 Sudas from the fact that it says Hayoim 3 times by the Mon. The Mon was called Lechem. Therefore, all 3 of the Sudas on Shabbos must have Lechem. Continues the Mishnah Berurah, V'gam mitzvah lachatchila laharbais b'ma'adanim kifi yecholtai. It's also a mitzvah that by Shalosh Shudas you should also have lots of delicacies. Okay, so that was the first opinion here in the Mechaber, that for Su'udas Shlishis you have to have pas. Continues the Mechaber, V'yesh Oimrim, however, there are those that say, and this is in the name of the Rosh, Sheyachal la'asoisa b'chol ma'achal ha'asui me'echad me'chameshes mine dagon. There's another opinion that says, no, you don't necessarily need pas. You need something that's made out of the 5 species of grain: wheat, barley, oat, spelt, and rye. Now, the Mishnah Berurah expands upon that a little bit. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Chav Daled, Me'echad mechameshes haminim, shemevarchin aleihem beirei mine mezainos. Now, there are a lot of people read this Mishnah Berurah, and there's a nuance here in the Mishnah Berurah that they miss. Some people read this Mishnah Berurah, and they think that the Mishnah Berurah is just defining for us. The Mechaber said that this shita holds you could use for shalosh shudas, you could use anything made out of the 5 species of grain. Comes along the Chavetz Chaim, and he reminds you, what chameshes mine dagan are we talking about? We're talking about the 5 species of grain upon which you would make a mezainos. It's not what the Mishnah Berurah means. The Mishnah Berurah is actually telling us a chiddush over here. What the Mishnah Berurah is saying is, yes, there are those that hold that for shalosh shudas, you could use anything that's made out of one of the 5 species of grain. Comes along the Mishnah Berurah and tells us that it's not enough that it's made out of one of the 5 species of grain. It also has to be a dish that you make a mezainos on. There are dishes that are made out of the chameshes mine dagan that you don't make a mezainos on. So, for example, let's say you took wheat kernels and you ate raw wheat kernels. You would not make a mezainos on raw wheat kernels. Raw wheat kernels are either a adama or a shahakal. We have to go back to Hilchos Brachos for that. But they are certainly not a mezainos. So it's echad mechameshes aminim, but it's not mezainos. We had a Mishnah Berurah earlier that said if you take some kind of a cracker and you use it only as a carrier, let's say somebody really wants to eat peanut butter. That's what he wants. He has a craving for peanut butter. But, to just take a spoon, stick it into the peanut butter, and eat it like that, it's not a way of eating it. So he takes a cracker, he takes a saltine or a Ritz or whatever have you, he takes a snacker, and he puts peanut butter on it, and he wants to eat it that way. If his real intent is only to eat the peanut butter, then even though he's eating a cracker, he doesn't make a mezainos. He would make a shahakal. He would make the bracha for the peanut butter. This was a Mishnah Berurah that we had earlier that says if you take minim arkachas, if you take a spread and you put it on a cracker, you only make the bracha that you would make on the spread. You don't make the bracha on the cracker. Now, for halakha lamaisa of what you should do if you eat peanut butter on crackers, that's a discussion we had earlier in Hilchos Brachos. It gets a little bit complicated because you really have to know what it is that you want to eat. Again, I'm saying that you would make a shahakal. That's if you really don't want the cracker. The cracker is only a carrier. That's all it is. In that case, then the cracker is bottled to the peanut butter. Because the peanut butter becomes the ikar, the cracker is just the tuffle. So you really have to know the case. You have to understand what it is that you want to eat and what this method of eating is. But my point right now for the halacha that we're learning here, where we're learning about Seudah Shlishis, is that there are times that you could eat something that's made out of chameshes mine dagan, but it's not a mezainos. In that case, you would not be yotzeh Seudah Shlishis by eating that, because even though you're eating echad mechameshes mine dagan, it has to be a mezainos. So that's what the Mishnah Berurah is telling me here in Chav Daled. It has to be something made out of one of the 5 species of grain, but it also has to be something that you make a mezainos on in order to be yotzeh shalosh shudas, according to this second opinion. Now, continues the Mishnah Berurah and he says, V'tam deyazu, the rationale for this second opinion here in the Mechaber. We have the first opinion that says you need challah. You need pas. We have a second opinion that says, no, you don't necessarily need pas. You could even have echad mechameshes mine dagan. V'tam deyazu, kevon de'ein derech lechol seudah shlishis l'teyavoi. The words of the Mishnah Berurah, the taich, like this. The third Seudah of the day is not a Seudah that would be typically eaten with a great appetite. Realize, by the time you come around to shalosh shudas, you had a nice big Friday night Seudah, you had a nice big Shabbos day Seudah, especially during the winter. By the time it comes time for Seudah Shlishis, you're usually not that hungry. And therefore, says the Mishnah Berurah, this opinion holds sagi b'hachi. You don't need pas. You could have a smaller Seudah. You could have something that's made mechameshes mine dagan. Now, this requires a little more explanation, because like we said, the first opinion that holds that you must have pas, he's coming off the pasuk. He says like this: Chazal wa misakin that you must eat 3 sudas on Shabbos. Where did they get this idea from? They supported it with a pasuk by the Mon. The pasuk by the Mon says, Hayoim, Hayoim, Hayoim. It's talking about the Mon. The Mon equals lechem, so therefore each one of the 3 sudas you have to have lechem. Comes along a second opinion and says, no, you don't need lechem. You can even have a piece of cake that you make mezainis on. We're going to see more opinions over here. There are going to be opinions that hold you can even be yotzei shalosh shudas with a shahakol. You could use devarim shemalaftim behem apas. You could be yotzei suda shlishis with a geschmack piece of herring. You have some jalapeno machos herring. You could be yotzei shalosh shudas that way. So not only you don't need pas, you don't even need chameshes minei dagon. Then we're going to have an opinion that says you could be yotzei suda shlishis with an apple. You could be yotzei with pears. So what is the rationale of these shitas that are being so makel by suda shlishis, and they're saying that you don't need pas, it could even possibly be an apple? What's the rationale? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. You have to understand the nature of suda shlishis. Especially back in the day, the custom was only to eat 2 sudas a day. You had a morning meal and you had a night meal. There was no lunch. There was breakfast and there was dinner. They didn't have lunch. That's why l'kavod Shabbos, it's a special kavod for Shabbos that Chazal added a 3rd suda. Like this, what's the great chiddush of shalosh seudos? We eat shalosh seudos every day. You have breakfast, lunch, and supper. That's shalosh seudos. Back in the day, they didn't eat 3 sudas every day. They ate 2 sudas every day. Came along Chazal, and they were mechabed Shabbos, and they said on Shabbos, we're adding a 3rd suda. But what's the nature of that 3rd suda? The nature of that 3rd suda is that it's an add-on. It's not a regular suda. The night suda Friday night, that's a regular suda. The morning suda Shabbos morning, that's a regular suda. This suda shlishis is an add-on meal. And Chazal realized that the nature of this add-on meal is that it is going to be a smaller meal. Because typically this suda would not be eaten l'te'avain. We don't expect you to have a massive appetite by the time you run around to suda shlishis. So the gzeira of the takana of shalosh sudas was not go ahead and eat 3 bang-up sudas, go eat 3 big sudas. No, that would already be coming to achila gasa. How much could a person eat? So the takana, at least according to these later opinions here in the Mechaber, the takana was, yes, you're going to have a major Suda Friday night. You're going to have another major Suda Shabbos morning. Then l'kavod Shabbos, we have an add-on 3rd Suda, but they understood that that 3rd Suda would be a small Suda. So yes, you have one sheet of the Rishonim that says you have to have pas. And the Ramah, the Mechaber himself is going to say that that first opinion is the Iker. The Iker is that, yes, we should wash it, we should have pas. We have other shittas that say, no, it doesn't need pas. It can even be small. Because Chazal, when they made this takana, they understood that this is only an add-on Suda, and therefore the nature of it is that it's going to be a smaller Suda. And that's what the Mishnah Berurah means here. And that is also the explanation for the other opinions that hold that you could do it with herring, you could have shalosh shudas out of an apple. Okay, let's go weiter in the Mechaber. Top line here is Samach with base. So we had so far one sheet to Yini Pas, another sheet to Chameshes Minei Dagon. Now we have the Yesh Omrim. There are those that say Sheyachal La'asoisa B'dvar B'Shemalaftim B'hem HaPas K'Basa V'Dogim. There are those that say that you could be Yotzei Seuda Shlishis B'Dvarim Shemalaftim B'hem HaPas. Going back to when we learned Hilchos Brachos, Dvarim Shemalaftim B'hem HaPas means foods, the Iker food of the meal that accompanies the bread. So if they were having meat for a Suda, they would have a nice amount of bread, and they would eat some meat together with the bread. If they were having fish, they would have bread, and they would eat some fish together with the bread. So Dvarim Shemalaftim B'hem HaPas means the shahakal aspect of the meal. You want to call it the protein, the meat, the fish, the chicken that accompanies the bread. So this Yesh Arbim says you could be Yotzei Seuda Shlishis with Dvarim Shemalaftim B'hem HaPas K'Basa V'Dogim, like meat or fish. Avaloi B'Peris. But this third opinion says, yes, you could use herring, you could use some salami, but you cannot use an apple, not fruit. The Yesh Arbim, but finally we have the Yesh Arbim here a Ran that says the afilu bepeiros yachal asaisa. You could even be yotzei suda shlishis with fruit. With Svaru Rishon Iker, the Mechaber says the first opinion is the Iker, that you should have pas, shetzarech la'asaisa bepas. Elin kenu savea b'yoser, unless you're very full by the time Suda Shlishis rolls around, and in that case, yes, you'll follow one of these later opinions. Says the Ramah Haggah, Oi, there's another case where you're not going to listen to the first opinion, and you're not going to use lechem. You know what that is? Oi b'makom she'ef shaloi lechel pas. There are times that you simply cannot eat pas. Halakhically, you cannot eat pas. Where would that be? Let's say it's Erev Pesach and it's Shabbos. Now you can't use lechem for Suda Shlishis. Why? Well, let's remember, what's the Zman of Suda Shlishis? Mincha Gedola. You can't be Yotzei Suda Shlishis before Mincha Gedola. When's Mincha Gedola? A half hour after Chatzos. Well, by then, you can't eat chametz. Because midrabanan, you already can't eat chametz after the 4th hour of the day, so that's already 2 hours before, an hour at least before chatzos. You can't eat bread. So chametz you're not going to be able to eat. Matzah you're also not allowed to eat. You're not allowed to eat matzah on Erev Pesach because you have to save the matzah for the seder. So you're not allowed to eat matzah on Erev Pesach. So here you have a case where it's Shabbos afternoon, you have to eat Suda Shlishis, and you can't have lechem, because you can't have chametz, and you can't have matzah. That's what the Ramah means here. Where by the time Mincha Gedola runs around, you're not allowed to eat bread anymore, not chametz, not matzah. So then what will you do? You'll be Yotzei Suda Shlishis with one of these other opinions. Either you're gonna have to have bas of a dagim, or you're gonna have to have peiros. But the Mishnah Berurah is going to give us another eitzah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is kalchafeish asaloi erev Pesach. You can't eat chametz, you can't eat matzah. Al kain. Therefore, the Mishnah Berurah gives us an eitzah how you could be yotzei shalashudis with chameshes minei dagan. So what the Chavetz Chaim wants to do here is like this. The Chavetz Chaim is taking the Mechaber in order of preference. The first opinion in the Mechaber was you need to wash, you need to have pas. The second opinion was a little bit more makel. Said you could have chameshes minei dagan, that's a mezainis. The third opinion was even more makel. You could use bas of a dagim, which is a shahakal. The last opinion was even more makel and said you could even use peiros. Okay, the Ramah says that the Mechaber paskin that the Iker is like the first opinion. You need pas. The Ramah came along and the Ramah said there's one day during the year that you might not be allowed to use pas. What do you do if Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos? Says the Mishnah Berurah, if that happens, okay, you can't have pas. But that doesn't mean that you should go all the way from the most chumradika shita that you need pas and go all the way to the most kuladika shita and eat an apple. No, go to the next option. You can't use pas, use chameshes minei dagan. Now, how are you going to use chameshes minei dagan on Erev Pesach if the chatzos? Explains the Mishnah Berurah what you're going to do. Alkain, yekayim oisa b'minei tigun, you should use something that's fried, she'oisin mi matzah ketusha, you should use something that's fried out of matzah meal. So some people make matzah latkes. What's matzah latkes? You take matzah meal, you mix it together with eggs and salt and maybe some spices, oil, and you fry them, and you make matzah latkes. So that's made out of chameshes minei dagan, but it's no longer considered pas. It's not a hamaitzi anymore. Now it became a mezainis. So that's not something that that's also to eat on Erev Pesach. It's not, you're not allowed to eat matzah on Erev Pesach, but this is no longer matzah. It's no longer hamaitzi. Now it's a mezainis. So here you have a way, says the Mishnah Berurah, that you could be yotzei suda shlishis on Shabbos, Erev Pesach, with something made of chameshes minei dagan, and it's something that you're allowed to eat. Or if you don't want to do that, you'll have bas of a dagim or peiros. Okay, let's move along here to Sivav, the final sif in this Siman. Says the Mechaber, Noshim chayavais b'su'uda shlishis. Women are mechuyev to eat su'uda shlishis just as men are. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Chafav chayavais b'su'uda shlishis. The lachol mili de Shabbos ish v'isha shavin. First of all, there's no difference between men and women. In the context of Hilchos Shabbos, everything applies to men and women equally, and therefore, just as Excuse me. Therefore, just as men are chayiv with seuda shlishis, so are women. K'moshe nispar b'siman reish ayin aleph sif beis v'oid. And furthermore, says the Chavetz Chaim, shagam heim hayu b'nei shal Haman. Remember, we're drawing this halacha, we're drawing this idea that you have to have 3 sudas on Shabbos from the mon. Well, the women also enjoyed the mon. Val kulam amar ichluhu hayoim. That pasuk that says hayoim 3 times and says ichluhu hayoim, eat the mon today, was talking about women just as men. To be said nilmad chiyav shali sudais b'Shabbos. Okay. Moving along to Siman Reish Tzadik Beis, din tfilas mincha b'Shabbos. The halachas that govern mincha on Shabbos afternoon, ubay beis seifim, and here we have 2 seifim. And it's interesting because tucked away in the middle of Sif Aleph over here, in the Mishnah Berurah, we're going to learn a couple of interesting things about the structure of davening that we have not seen before. Says the Mechaber Sif Aleph, by mincha on Erev Shabbos, and right away interjects the Ramah, Aimrim Ashrei Uval Tzion. You begin mincha Shabbos afternoon by saying Ashrei and Uval Tzion. Then the Ramah says, you say the pasuk of Va'ani Svilasi. Va'ani Svilasi L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain. What do these words mean? Va'ani, this is David HaMelech speaking in Tehillim. Va'ani, and I, Svilasi L'cha, I'm davening to you, I'm presenting my tefillah, my prayer to you, L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain. At a time of Ratzain, at a time when the Rebbeinu Shalom is inclined favorably to Klal Yisrael. Okay, we say that pasuk when after Ashrei Uval Tzion by mincha on Shabbos. Okay, we're going to get more into that in a moment. Why do we say Uval Tzion by Shabbos mincha? Hu bimkaim seder kedusha dechayil. Let's remember, we say Uval Tzion every day by Shachris. So why don't we say Uval Tzion by Shachris on Shabbos? Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Shabbos morning davening is very long. We have an extra long psuke de zimra, we have a long laning, we have musaf, hinichua ad hamincha. So Chazal took Uval Tzion out of Shachris on Shabbos, and they inserted it into mincha. Basically, this is in order to avoid tercha de tzibura. The Chazal didn't want that davening Shabbos morning should be onerous. So what they did was they said instead of having Uval Tzion by Shachris, we're going to insert Uval Tzion by Mincha. Okay, Ois Cotton Bays. Va'ani Svilasi. We say the pasuk of Va'ani Svilasi. Just want to see, just 1 second over here. The pasuk of Va'ani Svilasi. Va'ani Svilasi, Va'ani Svilasi, Va'ani Svilasi. Where's the pasuk of? Trying to remember where it is in Tehillim. Tell you right away. 1 second. Shabbos Mincha. Shabbos Mincha. Shabbos Mincha. I just forgot where the pasuk is in Tehillim. So the pasuk is. Here we go. Samach Tes. Samach Tes. Yudal. Kapitel Samach Tes. Kapitel Samach Tes. Yudalit. Vani Svilasi Lecha. David HaMelech says, I present my prayer to you, Hashem Eis Ratzain, at a time when Hashem is inclined favorably to Klal Yisrael. Elokim Hashem Berav Chastecha, with your abundant kindness, Aneni, you should answer me, Be'emes Yeshecha, with the truth of your salvation. That's the pasuk that we're saying. And when are we saying this pasuk? After Ashrei Uval Tzion by Mincha on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah Cotton Base. V'ani Svilasi. Why do we say this pasuk by Mincha on Shabbos afternoon? Hu al pi hamedrash. This is based on a medrash. Sha'amar David l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What David HaMelech said to the Rebbeinu Shalom was, Rebbeinu Shalom, Ein umazu ka'avdei gelulim. This nation, Klal Yisrael, is different than all the nations that worship idol worshippers. We're different than all of the non-Jewish nations. Sheshoisin umishtakrim upaychazim. The other nations, they drink, they get drunk, upaychazim, and then they act wild. Va'anu loichein. We're not like that. Afal pisha achalnu v'shasinu, even though it's now late Shabbos afternoon, and we've eaten and we had drink, right? Because we have to have a beautiful suda of Einik Shabbos. So we ate, we drank. Now what do? Do we go meshuggah? Do we act wild? No. Vani svilasi. Instead, we daven. After a Friday night suda, after a Shabbos day suda, what do? We go back to shul and we daven. And we could see this actually in the capital of Tehillim where this pasuk is. We have to take a look at the pasuk before this pasuk. Pasuk before this pasuk says like this. David HaMelech says to the Rebbeinu Shalom, Yasichu bi yoshvei sha'ar, the people who sit around by the gate. In other words, the do-nothing people, the ladygayers, the people who are just sitting around. Yasichu bi yoshvei sha'ar, the people who sit by the gate, they talk negatively about me. Uniginois shoisei sheichar, those people who make up songs after they drink. We've all heard of drinking songs. So David HaMelech is discussing over here, in a very negative way, the people who sit around and drink and make up songs. That's who he's talking about. So he says, Yasichu bi yoshvei shar digina shoisei sheichar. Those people who sit around by the gates and they make up songs, they speak negatively about me. Va'ani, but me, svilasi lecha Hashem eis ratzain. I come to daven to you when it's an eis ratzain. That's what Klal Yisrael is saying over here. We just ate, we just drank. Do we do what the Goyim do? We just ate, we drank. So now do we go crazy and do crazy things? No. Now we come back to shul and we daven. And that's why we say this pasuk by Mincha on Shabbos. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. Ava b'mincha shel Yom Tov ein omer moisai. Interesting. We don't say Vanis Vilasi L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain on Yom Tov Mincha. We only say it on Shabbos Mincha. Why? Kevan de'ein kairin b'Torah. Because by Yom Tov Mincha we don't lane. So what? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. Shehu Eis Ratzain al Yedei Zeh. What do we say in the pasuk? Vanis Vilasi L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain. Kriyas HaTorah, laning from the Torah, creates an Eis Ratzain. How does it create an Eis Ratzain? So what's brought down is, I think this is a Bach, right? The Bach brings down. The Bach says that by Kabbalas HaTorah, when we received the Torah in the Midbar, Kabbalas HaTorah was a tremendous Eis Ratzain. By Kabbalas HaTorah, everybody who was there by Har Sinai received Mechilas Avonos. They were forgiven for any averis that they may have done. They even reached a level of nevuah. They had a perception of the Rebbeinu Shalom that almost equaled nevuah. So the time of Kabbalas HaTorah was certainly a tremendous Eis Ratzain when the Rebbeinu Shalom was very favorably inclined towards Klal Yisrael. Says the Bach, when we take out the Sefer Torah and bring it to the Bima and we lane from the Sefer Torah, that invokes a little bit of that same Eis Ratzain that existed by Kabbalas HaTorah. I actually heard from a Rebbe of mine, Rav Gershon Weiss, Zechreinu Livracha, the former Manal of Yeshiva Staten Island. We had a Hachnasa Sefer Torah in the yeshiva, and he spoke, and I don't remember for sure who he quoted it from, but he said over from one of the Gdolim that somebody came to him that he was going to have that day, I think, a major court case. And this Gadol told him he should make sure that he should get an aliyah. It was a Monday or a Thursday. He told him you should have an aliyah by the Sefer Torah before you go out to the court case. And by the aliyah, the halacha is that by an aliyah, you have to look in the Sefer Torah and you have to read along together with the Balkairei. The Gadol told him, make sure that you look into the Sefer Torah with kavana, with intent, that you're reading from a Sefer Torah and the Kedushas Sefer Torah, the sanctity of the Sefer Torah. And if in your aliyah there's a pasuk that has the Shem, the name of Hashem, you should make sure to look at the Shem with kavana. You should look at it with intent. and the kedusha of the Sefer Torah, that will go into you, and that will create an eis rotzain for you during the day, and then you'll have a favorable outcome from the court case. So that's this concept that the Bach is talking about here. The Bach says that when we take out the Sefer Torah and we lane, we're bringing a little bit of that eis rotzain. That's why by Shabbos afternoon mincha we could say Anis v'lo Hashem eis rotzain, because we're laning, so it's an eis rotzain. Yom Tov we don't lane, so it's not an eis rotzain, and it's not appropriate to say that pasuk. Nevertheless, continues the Mishnah Berurah, and he says, Umiu b'Shabbos nagu la'amrei af b'makom she'ein sefer Torah. On Shabbos afternoon mincha we say the pasuk of Anis v'lo Hashem eis rotzain, even if we don't lane. Even if there's no Sefer Torah, you're davening somewhere, there's no Sefer Torah, so you're going to have a Mincha Shabbos you have to do without laning, you still say Vanis V'Lasila Hashem Yisratzai, V'chein Afilu B'Yachid. And also, if you daven B'Yechidus, this is very important, a lot of people don't know this halacha. If you daven B'Yechidus at home, on Shabbos afternoon Mincha, you say Vanis V'Lasila Hashem Yisratzai. There's no laning. So why are you saying it? So there's two reasons that are brought down. One reason is because once the Chazal established, or whoever it was exactly that established it, once it became established that Vanis V'Lasila Hashem Yisratzai became part of the Matbeya, it became part of the format of Mincha Shabbos afternoon, it remains that way. Even if you don't have Yechidus, even if you don't have laning. It's true, the underlying reason why we say it is not in play right now because you're not laning, but it doesn't matter. That's the matbeya. A matbeya is a coin. That's the stamp. That's the way the davening mincha of Shabbos afternoon was laid out, so you always say it. Another reason that's brought down is the Aruch HaShulchan brings down that Shabbos itself, he brings down from a Zohar, that Shabbos itself is an eis rotzain. The time of Shabbos is an eis rotzain. On Shabbos, the Rebbeinu Shalom is more favorably inclined to Klal Yisrael. So therefore on Shabbos we could always say Vanis V'Lasila Hashem eis rotzain. Yom Tov is not the same. Shabbos is, we know that Shabbos is a higher Kedusha, right? That's why we have 7 Aliyahs on Shabbos. We only have 5 Aliyahs on Yom Tov. Because Shabbos is the highest Madrega, Yom Kippur is a step down. That's why it's 6 Aliyahs. Yom Tov is a step down. That's why Yom Tov is 5 Aliyahs. So Shabbos is the eis rotzain. We could see Vanis V'Lasila Hashem eis rotzain. Okay. Back to the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Says the Mechaber, so we've started Mincha, we said Ashrei V'Lusiyain, we said Vanis V'Lasi, now Umaytzian Sefer Torah, we take out a Sefer Torah, V'Koirin Shloisha Anoshim, we call up 3 Aliyahs, and those Aliyahs read Asara Psukim, a minimum of 10 Psukim, Mi Parsha Haba, from next week's Parsha. So, if you're davening Mincha on Parshas Vayetze, Shabbos afternoon. So Mincha, you're going to lane Vayishlach, you're going to call up 3 Aliyahs, you're going to lane a minimum of 10 Psukim, and you're going to have a laning in Parshas Vayishlach. Continues the Mechaber, Va'afilu chal Yom Tov liyos b'Shabbos. This remains true even if Yom Tov happens to fall out on Shabbos. Kairin beParsha haba, you're still going to lane the laning of next week. So if you're holding on Sukkos, and you have the Yom Tov of Sukkos, one day Sukkos in the afternoon, one day Sukkos is Shabbos, so now you have laning, it's Sukkot said it's Shabbos, what are you going to lane? V'zayis habracha, because that's the next laning, that's the next parsha that comes up, so you're going to lane V'zayis habracha. What's the Chiddush? Says the Mechaber, V'loi b'shal Yom Tov. You might think, by Yom Tov by day, we have a special Yom Tov laning. Maybe Mincha of Yom Tov that happens to be Shabbos, maybe there's a special Yom Tov laning. Says the Mechaber, no, there's no such thing as a special Yom Tov laning for Mincha, because like the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, a regular Yom Tov Mincha does not get laning. The only reason there's laning is because it's Shabbos. So what do you lane on Shabbos Mincha? The next Parsha. So even if it's Yom Tov, what are you going to lane? The next Parsha. Says the Mishnah Berurah is Cut and Gimel. Umaytzian. You're going to take out a Sefer Torah, Shabbos by Mincha, you're going to call up 3 Aliyahs, and you're going to lane a selection from next week's Parsha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hu mi Takanos Ezra. This is one of the Takanos that were made by Ezra HaSefer, K'di'isa b'Gemara, like the Gemara says about Bakama, Pei Beis Amud Aleph, and we learned about this earlier when we were learning Hilchas Kriyas HaTorah. Ois Katan Daled, says the Mishnah Berurah, Shloisha Anoshim, you call up 3 Aliyahs. Says the Mishnah Berurah as follows. Very interesting thing that I'm sure you've all noticed in Shul. When you lane on Monday, when the Balkari finishes the laning, when after the last Oila says his closing bracha of the Aliyah, what does the Balkari do? He says Kaddish. But by Mincha, Shabbos afternoon, there is no Kaddish after laning. So too by a Tainis Tzibur. Tainis Tzibur, you lane Vayachal by Mincha. The Balkari doesn't say Kaddish at the end of the laning. So Monday and Thursday, the Balkari says Kaddish at the end of laning. Shabbos morning, the Balkari says Kaddish after Shvi. He says Kaddish after laning. But by Mincha Shabbos afternoon, or by a Tainis Tzibur Mincha afternoon, the Balkari does not say Kaddish at the end of the laning. Why not? Says the Mishnah Berurah as follows. Shloisha Noshim. B'mincha ein oimrim Kaddish al habima la'olam. By Mincha, you never say Kaddish by the bima after laning. Hainu bein b'Shabbos, bein b'Tainis. Whether it's a laning by Mincha on Shabbos afternoon, or it's a laning by Mincha on Tainis Tzibur, the Balkari does not say Kaddish by the bima after the conclusion of the laning. Rak, when do you say Kaddish? Lifnei ha'omud. You say it, the Chazan is going to say a Chatzi Kaddish when he goes back to the Omid after laning, Koidim Tfilah Shmain Esrei, right? What do? At the end of laning, there's no Kaddish. Then you have Hag Ben Galila. After Hag Ben Galila, the Chazan is going to take the Sefer Torah, he's going to say Yahalalu. Everybody's going to say L'David Mizmar, Uvenucha Yoimar. They're going to put the Sefer Torah back in the Aron. Then the Chazan is going to go to the Omid and he's going to say a Chatzi Kaddish. So the Chatzi Kaddish is by the Omid before Mincha Shman Esrei. It's not by the Bima after laning. The Koinami has Sefer Torah. But that Kaddish that the Chazan is going to say by the Omid is going back also on the laning. Why is it this way? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. Di yoimru miyad ala bima. Let's say we wouldn't do it that way. Let's say we would do what we do every Monday and Thursday. Let's say Shabbos, let's take Shabbos afternoon Mincha, since those are the halachas that we're learning over here. Let's say by Shabbos afternoon Mincha, after the laning, the Chazan, the Balkari, would go ahead and say Kaddish. Okay. The yoimru miyad alabima, im kain, if so, lifnei amid lo yoimru Kaddish. Then would the Chazan be able to say Kaddish after they put the Sefer Torah back in the Aron by the Amid? No, he can't say Kaddish. The Kaddish has to go back on something. Kaddish has to go back. A regular Kaddish, Chatzi Kaddish, Kaddish Shalem, not Kaddish D'Rabbanan, but a Chatzi Kaddish or a Kaddish Shalem has to go back on Psukim. Now, what Psukim is it going to go back on? Let's take a regular Mincha every day. You say Ashrei. After Ashrei, you say Kaddish. What's the Kaddish going back on? It's going back on the Ashrei. A regular Shachris. You daven Psukim de Zimra, then after Yishtabach, there's a Kaddish. What's the Kaddish going back on? It's going back on Psukim de Zimra. So the Kaddish is going on Psukim. You say Kaddish after Shemona Esrei. There's no Psukim. But over there, the Kaddish goes back on the Tefillah. It goes back on the Tefillah Shemona Esrei. But Kaddish has to go back either on Psukim or on Shemona Esrei. And by Psukim, there have to be at least 3 Psukim. So now, could you have a Kaddish after laning, Mincha Shabbos afternoon? You can, because you just laned Psukim, so you could say a Kaddish. But if you said a Kaddish over there, would the Chazan be able to say a Kaddish when he goes back to the Amid after they put away the Sefer Torah? No. What's the Kaddish going to go back on? There's nothing to say that Kaddish on. Now you'll say, okay, so what's the big deal? So don't say a Kaddish. Says the Mishnah, you can't do that. Ki ein b'mela hafsik ben hakadeshim. You can't have another Kaddish before Shemona Esrei because there's nothing there. There's nothing that interrupted. There were no new psukim to say Kaddish over. Now, the Mishnah Berurah puts it in the brackets. What do you mean? How about Yahalalu? Yahalalu Hashem Kinizkav Shema Levadoi. That the Chazan said when he took the Sefer Torah from the Bima to put the Sefer Torah back. That's a pasuk. Yeah, but it's only one. Yahalalu pasuk echad lo have a hefsek. That's not enough to create a new Kaddish. Va'av she'omer mizmar la'Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya. We're going to say l'David mizmar la'Hashem ha'aretz u'malaya. That's Tilim, and it's a lot of psukim. So maybe the Kaddish could go back on that. No, the Mishnah Berurah says the Kaddish can't go on that. Ein zeh me'ikar adin. The fact that we say that kapitel Tilim when we put the Sefer Torah back, it's a minig. It's not me'ikar adin. It's not something that's choshev enough to say Kaddish over. Ashrei, again, a regular mincha every day. You say Ashrei, then there's a Chatzi Kaddish. That you could do. Ashrei is me'ikar adin. It's part of mincha. So yes, you could say Kaddish after Ashrei. But to say Kaddish after l'David Mizmar Hashem Haaretz Malaya that the people say when they put the Sefer Torah back, that's not Me'ikar Adin. You can't say Kaddish after that. Okay, so let's follow the paper trail over here. We have to carefully understand this. Again, the Mishnah Berurah is addressing the following question. Monday and Thursday, when the Balkari finishes laning, he says Chatzi Kaddish after laning. Shabbos morning, the Balkari finishes laning after the 7th Aliyah, he says Chatzi Kaddish after laning. Punkt, Shabbos afternoon Mincha, or a Tainis Tzibur Mincha, there's no Kaddish after laning. Why not? Explains the Mishnah Berurah because you have to realize how the Kaddish works. The Kaddish has to go back on something. So what are you going to do? You're going to have the Balkari say Chatzi Kaddish after the laning? By Mincha Shabbos afternoon? Fine, that could work. He could say Kaddish then. But then what's going to happen? Then the Chazan is going to take the Sefer Torah. He's going to say Yahalalu. Yahalalu, that's only one pasuk. The Tzibur is going to say L'David Mizmar. That's not Me'ikar Adin. They're going to put the Sefer Torah back. The Chazan is going to come to the Amud. Could he say Kaddish now? No. There's nothing for the Kaddish to go back on. Now, why is that a problem? That's what the Mishnah Berurah has not yet expressed. Why is that a problem? So fine, so don't have a Kaddish now. Have Kaddish after laning, put the Sefer Torah back, and then give a clap and have everybody start Shemoneh Esrei. Why do you have to have a Kaddish now? Oh, explains the Mishnah Berurah. You must have a Kaddish right before Shemoneh Esrei. Why do you have to have a Kaddish before Shemoneh Esrei? So the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say why not, but why you must have it. I believe the answer is a Mishnah in Masechtas Brachas and Lamed Amud Beis. The Mishnah in Masechtas Brachas says that Ein oimdim lehispalel ela mitoch kovid roish. When you go into daven Shemoneh Esrei, you have to come to Shemoneh Esrei mitoch kovid roish, from a seriousness. You can't just walk into Shemoneh Esrei. So therefore, there has to be a Kaddish. Yiskadal v'yiskadash Shmei Rabbah. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach la'olam al'olmei amaya. You have to have a Kaddish before you have Shemoneh Esrei. That's the linchpin over here. That's how the Mishnah Berurah now everything falls into place. You can't say Kaddish right after Kriyas HaTorah, by Mincha Shabbos afternoon, or by Mincha B'Tainis Tzibur, because then you have a Kaddish then you're going to put away the Sefer Torah. The Chazan is going to go back to the Amud. He can't say a Kaddish because there's nothing for the Kaddish to go back on. And you must have a Kaddish before Shemoneh Esrei. Now, some of you are shaking your head and you're saying, wait a second, Rabbi Weiss, you have to have a Kaddish before Shemoneh Esrei? Every day by Shacharis, we don't have a Chatzi Kaddish before Shemoneh Esrei. We say Tzur Yisrael, Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael, and we go into Shemoneh Esrei. There's no Chatzi Kaddish. The answer is that over there we can't have a Kaddish, because you have to be masmich geula l'tfila. You're not allowed to interrupt between the bracha of Baruch Atah Hashem Gal Yisrael and Hashem Svasai Tiftach, because you're mechuyev to be masmich geula l'tfila. You have to put geula and davening and the tefillah of Shemoneh Esrei right next to each other without a hefsek. So over there you can't have a Kaddish. Also over there you don't have a problem of la'olam ein oinim lehispalel mitoch kovid roish, because you're just coming off of Kabbalas al Malchus Shamayim. You're just coming off of Kriya Shema and Birchas Kriya Shema. So you have that, but over here you wouldn't have it. So therefore, explains the Mishnah Berurah, the Kaddish must be postponed until right before Shemoneh Esrei, and that Kaddish is also going to go back on Kriyas HaTorah. So again, so the Mishnah Berurah says over here, you don't have this problem, Shachris on Shabbos after Kriyas HaTorah. In other words, Ken, this is a very funny Mishnah Berurah. You have to read a lot between the lines here. Masha'ein kain b'shachris. What the Mishnah Berurah means is, you don't have this problem by the laning that you laned by Shachris on Shabbos morning. Over there, the Balkari does say Kaddish after Shvi. How about Musaf? No problem. Over here, you could have two Kaddishim. The Balkari could say Kaddish, Chatzi Kaddish at the end of laning on Shabbos. And then what's going to happen? Well, then you're going to have Maftir. You're going to have the HaTorah. It's all Psukim. Then you're going to say you could perk the Mishnah Berurah of Harachamim. And then you're going to say Ashrei. Ashrei is Psukim from Tehillim. So now you could have another Chatzi Kaddish before the Shemoneh Esrei of Musaf, and you could fulfill the Mishnah Novus Ein Oimdim L'Hispalel Mitoch Kovid Roish, because you'll have a Chatzi Kaddish right before the Shemoneh Esrei of Musaf, and you could still have a Chatzi Kaddish right after laning, and it's no problem. Yesh Hefsik B'Miras Ashrei B'Intayim. Ulafizeh. According to this whole paper trail that we just explained, Ulafizeh, Kishe'ein Sefer Torah B'Shabbos Mincha. Let's say you're davening Mincha Shabbos afternoon, and you don't have a Sefer Torah, based on everything that we just learned, should the construct of davening be any different? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Lo yomer rak pam achas kaddish achrei ashrei v'olitzion. So if you have a minyan, you're going to say Chatzi Kaddish after Ashrei V'Olitzion, Upasik Vanis Vilasi, Yomru Oz Koydem HaKaddish. A regular Shabbos afternoon mincha, when you have Kriyas HaTorah, what happens? Ashrei, Uvolitzion, Chatzi Kaddish, that's going back on Ashrei V'Olitzion, then Vanis Vilasi L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain, then laning, and then a Kaddish before Shemoneh Esrei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, if you're davening with a minyan Shabbos afternoon, but you don't have Kriyas HaTorah, don't say Vanis Vilasi L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain between Kaddish and Shemoneh Esrei. No, put Vanis Vilasi L'cha Hashem Eis Ratzain right after Uvolitzion. Have the Kaddish go back on Ashrei Uvolitzion and Vanis Vilasi, then say Kaddish, and have no hefsik between the Kaddish and the Shemoneh Esrei, because the Kaddish and Shemoneh Esrei can't have a hefsik between them. Okay, Ice Cut Hey, the Mishnah Berurah says, V'loi b'shal Yom Tov, on Yom Tov afternoon, if it happens to be Shabbos, so then you're going to have a regular laning like you do every Shabbos afternoon. You're going to lane a selection from next week's Parsha. Don't think that there's a special Yom Tov laning for that Yom Tov afternoon that happens to be Shabbos Mincha. V'loi b'shal Yom Tov, and the Mishnah Berurah explains why, and I spoke this out earlier, Tahar HaKriya einena b'shal Yom Tov. Because when you lane by Mincha Shabbos afternoon that happens to be Yom Tov, the only reason there's a laning is because it's Shabbos. The fact that it's Yom Tov doesn't generate a laning. If Yom Tov is not Shabbos, you don't lane by Mincha. So what is this laning being generated by? Shabbos. So then the standard rules of Shabbos apply. You lane a selection from the next week's Parsha. Dabe Mincha b'Yom Tov ein kairin, because Mincha on Yom Tov would not generate a Kriyas HaTorah. We'll stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbeinu Shalom should send Yeshua Sefer Parnas and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Bias Gael Tzedek b'meherav Yameinu Amen. Be well.